What's good, kings and queens? I hope everyone's doing alright. This week's video is on boxing's Unification Hangover. The origin is an American football term called the Super Bowl hangover. The Super Bowl is the NFL's biggest game between the AFC and NFC division champs. In many cases throughout the history of the NFL, the losing team, or in rare cases the winning team, is never able to capture the same or above success they did for seasons to come, as far as hitting absolute rock bottom the following season to not qualify for the postseason spot. With that being said, let's start the video. In 2006, Carlos Baldomir unexpectedly came onto the scene, winning a huge upset against undisputed champion Zab Judah. Since Carlos did not pay the sanction fees, in which he claimed that he was never approached about in the first place, Carlos would only be awarded the ring and WBC title. The WBA no longer recognizing Judah as the champion, removing super status and having Luis Collazo as the legitimate WBA champion. The IBF will continue to recognize Judah as the champion. Judah will lose the title against Floyd Mayweather later that year. Since Mayweather was pound for pound #1 and he was hoping to have started 06 year off fighting for the undisputed title against Judah, he would have to eye the new champion Carlos Baldomir. Baldomir will go on to win another upset victory against Arturo Gatti. According to the pre-fight, Gatti did no research on Carlos, stating that he knows nothing on him, just that he beat Zab Judah. Gatti, known for coming on fight day rather high, causing his opponents to have such a disadvantage that in his next fight after the controversial Gamache KO, the New York Athletic Commission forced him to weigh in the day of the fight rather than the day before their fight due to the wide public backlash.
It ain't something, they're singling out Gotti. I feel it's very unfair to single out Gotti. Look at James Toney, 18 pounds before the Roy Jones fight. So if you look at a lot of incidences before this incident, you'll see a lot of fighters. It ain't just a problem with Gotti, it's a problem in boxing. But how do you fix the problem? As long as a fighter makes the weight designed by the contract, I don't believe there's a problem with the next day him weighing up to 40, 50 pounds over.
Gatti would ironically and unknowingly be coming in against a fighter who casually walks around at 180 pounds, makes 147, and comes in on fight day above 160. I think if Gatti may have known about this detail, he would have fought a completely different fight and may have won. The Mayweather and Baldomir fight is made in November of 2006 for the WBC ring, lineal, and IBO titles. Despite Mayweather being the heavy favorite to win, the odds of the fight going to distance was a bit high. Going by Floyd's last 4 fights, where he had 3 straight stoppages, and before the riot in the ring, you can make a case Floyd was on the verge of stopping Judah. The public believed that Floyd had what it took to put away Carlos, despite completely ignoring the fact that Floyd's trainer, Roger Mayweather, would not be able to give him instructions due to being suspended, making Leonard Ellerbe the head coach on fight day. Also, another detail, Floyd only rehydrated 2 pounds while Carlos was walking around at 162 pounds on fight day. Floyd will fight a very educated fight, completely shutting out Baldomir to win by wide unanimous decision. Since the cat was out of the bag with this one, and the myth of Carlos Baldomir was broken due to the lack of fight tapes to study, Carlos will go on to never reach what he did before, especially after moving up to where he lost every advantage he had to bully fighters to where he was the one being bullied.
And this is Zasman. Down goes Baldomir on a rocket left hook. That's the biggest moment of the night for the crowd. They're going wild. And the count is finished, and he knocked Baldomir out. Not a TKO.
This fight was for the WBC, WBA, and vacant ring title. Canelo, the WBC champion, and Trout, the WBA regular champion. I think this may have been the last fight I've seen where a WBA regular champion was allowed to unify when there's a super champion. This fight also had another rare occasion where Ring Magazine approved that a number 2 ranked fighter will be allowed to fight a number 3 ranked fighter for the vacant ring title. More than likely due to the circumstances what was happening to Floyd avoid at that time. Trout was and still is today an underrated fighter. He came on the scene picking up the WBA title against Rigoberto Alvarez, then 3 defenses later would have his coming out party against the legend Miguel Cotto. A lot of people disrespectfully slept on Trout that night.
Right at the stage, my family had to sit outside. Are you kidding me? I was like, that's bullshit. Because Canelo's ass, who has nothing to do with this fight, is on my stage. Did he have a wristband? He's like, so my family sits outside while I get booed on stage. See, that's okay, Monica. I'm gonna punch Cotto in his mouth just because of this.
And was already set forward with Cotto's next fight, who will be Canelo Alvarez. Trout would get the biggest win of his career, defeating Cotto by unanimous decision. The fight was incredibly competitive and in most cases even. Trout's experience was getting the better of Canelo thanks to his early body work, tricky style, and amazing jab. The 6th round, for almost the full round, he completely disables Canelo's offense thanks to brilliant body work, defense, and a stiff jab that kept Canelo at bay. Canelo would land a nice uppercut to end the round off and possibly carry momentum in the next round. The 7th round, Canelo needed something to change the tide, and he got it in the first 20 seconds, dropping Trout. This will be Trout's first knockdown of his career. Trout would recover rather quickly and mount up a rally in that very same round as Canelo had seemed to punch himself out. Canelo, clearly taking the 8th round off, will be outpunched and worked by Trout despite evading quite a bit of Trout's shots. The next final round will be as even and competitive as it gets. Since the fight was open scored and also this fight being in Texas, you're going to see some of the worst scorecards ever rendered. Trout being informed that he needs a knockout to win, and Canelo was told to fight smart, reasons why Canelo was mostly on the defensive. This fight was close, Canelo won, but these scorecards were absolutely disgraceful. But hey, that's Texas for you. One judge scored the fight 118-110, 111-116, the final score being 115-112 being the most competent of them all. Going into round 11, Al Bernstein had the fight a draw, Steve Farhood had Canelo up by 1 round, and Paulie with the same score as Steve. This would pretty much sum up Trout after Canelo, either questionable scores not in his favor or just coming up short. He will go 0-4 in his next title fights, but after all that, I would not rule him out in his next title fight if he gets another opportunity. Mayorga had a pretty wild run to get to this moment. He will win the WBA welterweight title against Andrew Lewis in the rematch, the first fight being ruled a no contest due to an accidental butt. Since it seemed like he was prey because Mayorga was virtually unknown, the 10-1 betting favorite Vernon Forrest stepped up to the plate to unify against Mayorga for the WBC, WBA, and vacant ring titles. Mayorga was shocked the world, stopping Forrest in the 3rd round. Like, take a look at this official HBO poster here. The amount of disrespect, not a single care was given to Mayorga coming to the fight. Vernon takes up the entire poster, his name in big letters, while Mayorga's name is so tiny. It's just screaming at you, "Hey, look at me! I'm fighting Vernon! I'm his opponent!" Since HBO had quite a bit riding on Vernon, since he beat #1 pound-for-pound fighter Shane Mosley, a rematch was hastily made where Mayorga once again would finish victorious, winning by a majority decision. This win here will set him up for the undisputed welterweight unification against IBF champion Corey Spinks. Corey is the son of former gold medalist and heavyweight champion Leon Spinks, and his uncle is former gold medalist, light heavyweight, and heavyweight champion Michael Spinks. Incredibly close fight, a very smart fight played out by Spinks because Mayorga is incredibly dangerous at 147. The 2-point penalization in the 5th and 11th round being the difference maker in this fight, and Spinks will become the undisputed welterweight champion. After Mayorga was ruled the underdog in his first fight, you could say this was the first fight he came in as a heavy favorite, as Spinks came in as the 5-1 underdog.
No comprendo por qué Don Kim me busca boxeadores malos como este payaso.
I don't understand, honestly. I'm a little bit confused how Don
got me this bum that I have to fight this Saturday.
Mayorga was never really able to come back after this to become champion, as he was pretty much being used as a prize fighter stepping stone for big fights, losing to Felix Trinidad to set up his fight against Winky Wright, lost to Oscar De La Hoya to set up a fight with Floyd, Mosley to set up a fight with Margarito, and lastly Cotto to set up a Margarito rematch and also a Floyd fight. After the Cotto fight, it was pretty much downhill from there, where in his final fight he'll be put away in 2 rounds by Lester Martinez in his pro debut. I think this is the only fight on the list where the winner is more affected than the fighter that lost. Thurman was put on the shelf for quite a while, and once Floyd had retired, he could finally come out and show the world who he was in the welterweight picture. In a very questionable matchup for Floyd's vacant WBC title, Danny Garcia was put against Robert Guerrero. Now, why was this a questionable matchup? Judging by the WBC ranks of the welterweight division prior to Floyd's retirement, neither fighter deserved a shot. Danny was stripped of the junior welterweight WBC title for failing to fight his mandatory opponent Victor Postal, and Guerrero was ranked number 6 by the WBC. This is Danny's first fight at welterweight, and he's magically moved up to number 2 in the rankings. Amir Khan is ranked not only number 1 by the WBC, but holds the silver title, which he had earned that position in 2014. This goes to show you having rank and holding the silver title doesn't really matter when you see a fighter who is not only stripped of the same title in another weight class for failing their duties as champion can move up and fight their first fight for the world title in a division that you're in. So Danny easily beats Guerrero, and after a non-title tune-up against Samuel Vargas, the unification is set against Keith Thurman the following year in 2017. Thurman will go on to beat Danny by a split decision, giving him his first loss to become the unified champion.
This is your boy Keith one-time Thurman, and still champion of the world. 1 time became 2 times, baby. Ain't no robberies happening tonight.
Unfortunately, Thurman would be out for the entire year due to an ugly elbow injury that required surgery. So since he won his biggest fight and never really had a break, he most deservingly went out to enjoy the finer things in life outside of boxing and went on a spiritual trip through Asia where he pretty much vanished off of social media for many months. The next time fight fans will catch a glimpse of Keith is by cell phone video from a local of him in Nepal having a fun light sparring session with Nepali soldiers, which was actually pretty cool to see. Keith will end up getting in a serious relationship and married as well in Nepal later that year. Since Keith was promoted to super status just before the Garcia fight by the WBA, he was able to keep his title since most of the weight when it comes to mandatories is pushed on the regular champion, but he was forced to vacate the WBC title. Thurman went the whole 2018 year without fighting. His first fight since the Garcia unification was on January 2019. He will start the fight quickly, but the fight will drag on to a very tough, well-contested match where Thurman won by a majority decision against number 7 ranked Josecito Lopez. This is where we get the Manny Pacquiao fight. Manny started the fight fast as always. Thurman would rally and tighten up the scorecards, but it was not enough and he would lose the title. Due to the events in 2020 and just the fact that he really doesn't have to fight anymore. In 2022, after almost 3 years, we finally saw Keith back in the ring and on a positive note. He looked very good for a guy who had been out of the ring for that long against a former title holder, Mario Barrios. Juan Diaz was clearly one of the best lightweights in the division. He will have a big 2007 year, unifying against Brazilian legend Acelino Freitas and Julio Diaz to pick up the IBF, WBO, and WBA titles. Diaz will unfortunately lose all that to Nate Campbell, then for Nate to lose all the belts on the scale in his next fight. Diaz would come back and beat high-ranked Michael Caceres for the vacant IBO title. All while this was happening in the year 2008, Marquez is coming off his loss against Manny Pacquiao for the WBC ring and lineal title. His next fight in September of that year would be against ring and lineal lightweight champion Yoel Casamayor. In an incredibly close fight, 2 judges scoring it even coming into the 11th round, Marquez would finally break through, dropping Casamayor, who seemed in the previous round to be mocking Marquez's power, then to be finished off by Marquez for the TKO win in the final 10 seconds to become champion.
He's down again, and that's it. It's over. Juan Manuel Marquez.
Pretty much a fight between Marquez and Diaz was immediately made to happen since Campbell lost all those belts on scale and he was able to win the fight. They all remained vacant. Both Diaz and Marquez were eligible to fight for the vacant WBO and WBA titles. I really haven't seen that before where you have two fighters fighting for two vacant titles that are on the line.
Showing respect, ripping Marquez with another left hook. 3 body shots from Marquez. Diaz goes in with the right hand. This is going to be a hellacious war. Marquez trying to fire back. Lands a right cross and a left hook. Round 1 is an all-out war. And they taunt each other.
This fight was crazy from round 1 and on. There wasn't a single break in action. Diaz would begin to tire out midway through, and Marquez taking full advantage of that, brutally putting away Diaz in the 8th round.
And he's supposedly the stronger man. And he's hurt. A huge uppercut. Down goes Diaz. And look at Marquez go to the body. Look at him go to the body to try to set up the finish.
Diaz will go 1 for 3. That one would be a controversial decision against Paulie Malignaggi. After the loss against Marquez in the rematch, Diaz decided to retire from the sport and focus on his career, as all while he was fighting, he was a full-time student getting his degree at a university.
He is the quintessential student athlete. You know, you hear that term thrown around a lot. Well, Juan Diaz, he is a championship athlete and he is an excellent student.
On a positive note, Diaz will make a return 3 years later and would continue to fight up until 2016 to go 7-0. I did an entire video about the tale of this fight, please check that out. This fight was for the vacant IBO and lineal titles. This was one of the biggest featherweight matchups money can buy as far as 2001 goes. A pay-per-view fight between two featherweights headlining is unheard of. Better yet, generating 310,000 pay-per-view buys, which is a solid pay-per-view with all that being said. The 3-1 underdog Barrera would beat Hamed very convincingly to give him his first loss. Hamed was never the same after that. He would fight one more time a year later, which his performance was met with boos from the crowd, then shortly after that he would announce his retirement. I said this numerous times and I'll say it again. Ndongo had one of the most brilliant runs to get to this position to be fighting for the undisputed title. Ndongo, virtually unknown, won the WBO African Regional belt. Then in a huge upset win, he will dethrone Edouard T with one punch for the IBF and IBO titles. Since he's not really tied to anyone politically really that would prevent a unification from not happening, he was immediately thrown in another unification against WBA champion Ricky Burns. He was a slight underdog, but he will come up victorious. Now we have him against ring and unified champion Terrence Crawford, and very anticlimactically, because I really built up Ndongo's come up, but Mark Marmack for all the belts at cruiserweight in January 2006. I don't know if Ndongo just got old overnight as he was 34 years old when he fought Terrence. It can happen to anybody, but he would go 1-5 after the Crawford fight. 3 of those 5 losses were by TKO.
Oh, a big left hand from liver, and then we just programmed. Whoa, and he's down again for a second time. He wants to fight. He's calling it off. He's waving it off.
And on top of that, this is Boxing's Unification Hangover. For more installments, be sure to like, share, and if you're new, subscribe. Subscribe to the Patreon for early access and patron-backed projects. This project being on Vasil Lomachenko versus Teofimo Lopez. I'm Alphas Hancho, and I'm out.